My name is Stanislaw Liberta with AV Ultra, and today we are going to be making an animated lower third. So something like this. You can see here we've got some different animation happening inside the lower third. All these buildings kind of pop up and then they will pop back out. And we're going to be taking a look at how to create this using some of the assets we already have. This is part 3 of our 3-part lower thirds tutorials. And if you're wondering how we got this far, we look at a lot of this in part 2. So in part 3, we're really going to be using a lot of these same assets and adding these buildings in here and animating in this background here. So if you're wondering how we put this together, I would jump back to part 2. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and jump right into part 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off everything but my main title here. So I just want to focus on this main title. And so I can just solo that guy here. And I also want to have my outline with it as well. So wherever the main title goes, I want this outline to follow it. And the easiest way to do that is just use our pick whip tool right here. So here's my main title outline, and I'm just going to drag that to the main title. And what that effectively does is anytime that I move my title left or right, my outline comes with it. If I don't have that, here's what it'll look like, right? Not very good. So I want to make sure that I have that outline actually pick whipped to our title. All right, so let's go ahead and start working on this. I'm going to just go ahead and work with this main title bar and figure out when we want this to come onto the scene. So I already animated that background here. And I want this whole animation to last maybe about a second for it to come in, and then at the end about a second. For right now, I'm just going to be doing all the build in. So I'm going to have this build in at 1 second, go to my main title and set my position, and go back and just move that off the screen here. And when I play that back, there we go. In fact, I can have this blueprint follow this as well, so that way it looks like it's moving right along with it. Yeah, I think that looks better. And now that I have that animation, let's finesse it just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and grab these keyframes, right click, and go to Easy Ease. And now that's smoothed out some of the animation here. Kind of slows down as it kind of stops there. Perfect. So I've got my main title bar there. I also want my subtitle to pretty much follow exactly that same movement. I'm going to make sure I have my subtitle outline pick whipped to my subtitle bar, and I'm going to do the same thing. So we want this to end at exactly 1 second here. So I turn on my stopwatch for position, go back to the beginning, and we'll drag it off here. And I'm going to right away go ahead and easy ease those and play that back. You can see that kind of comes in right there. Now, I want my subtitle bar to come in just a little bit after my regular bar. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to speed up my main title bar, drag that back a little bit. So it looks like this, right? And I'll have my subtitle start just a little bit later. So it looks like one comes in and then the other. Beautiful. So all I did there was kind of finesse the animation. Now, I have a couple other things to keep in mind here, like our actual text here. Now, our text, if you'll notice, as my stuff is moving, isn't following. All I have to do is take my subtitle and pick whip it to my subtitle bar, and take my main title and pick that to the main title bar. So now they should follow right along with there. All right, excellent. Now the other thing we want to do is have these right 3 bars come in. And these are pretty easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this right one here. And again, I want everything to end at no later than 1 second. So I'm starting just a few frames before 1 second at 27 frames, and that's where that one's going to end. And we'll just go ahead and move it to the left off the screen there. Okay, so let's do that for the rest of them. I'll go to my position, and I want this one to end just a couple frames before that last one. So we'll make another keyframe, go back to the beginning, drag it to the left. And I don't know if you can see that, but I'm actually dragging it right to about where that last one was. I like having them all start the same place. Just keeps it a little bit more organized. And I'll do the same thing with that last left bar. And let's see. I'm exactly 1, 2, 3, 4 frames away from this one. So I'll make sure I'll do that 4 frames to the next one. Just using page up to go up 1 frame at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's where that one is going to end. And then we'll scoot back to the beginning and pull it right back here. All right, perfect. If I want all 3 of these to be exact, I'll just pick this one here, 694. That way they all start at exactly the same X coordinate. I'm going to go ahead and grab all 6 of those keyframes and ease those as well. And we'll just play this back now. And that's starting to look pretty good. All right. The last thing I want to animate right here are these buildings. And I'm going to have a little bit of a hard time the way it is right now. The reason for that is if I have these kind of pop up from the bottom, here's what that's going to look like. We're going to start that at 1 second, work our way backwards here, and pull it down. And you'll notice that we're going to see it there. And you know, that might be fine, but I think that looks like it could be better. So I'm going to undo that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-comp this building here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-comp this layer here. And I'm going to pre-compose it, and I'm going to leave all attributes in there. And I'm just going to call it the building group comp 1. And the reason why I'm pre-comping it is currently right now that whole comp only takes up this much space, right? So I'm going to lock this composition right here. And what that's going to let me do is if I double click this, it's actually going to open up a new composition window. And I'm just going to drag that off to the side here. And now anything that I do here is going to automatically show up in my final result. So what I'm going to do is at 1 second, animate the position here, and then move it back and drag it down here. Notice it disappears, and as it's animating, it's coming from the bottom of this area here, because that is the composition window that it can exist in. So I'm just going to take this guy, right? And maybe we'll start him here. Right, so that's what it looks like. And when I play it back in here, that's what that looks like there. And what I can do with this layer here too is I'm just going to mask out that. I've got this little line here from when I save this. We're just going to mask that out. There. Now it doesn't exist. All right. So excellent. That's one way I can do it, but I want to do something just a little fancier still. So instead of using this group here, what I've done is I'm going to get rid of this group completely. Is I've cut out all these individual buildings here. So if I double click each one of these, you can see I've got each of those individual buildings. But the reason why I cut them out was so that way I can have them each pop up independently of each other. So we're going to make a new comp here, and let's make it, say, 800 by 800. And I'm just going to start putting in my buildings here, right? So I'm just dragging my buildings one at a time. They're going to be all pretty huge for the time being. So I'm going to scale that down here. And I had cut this up in Photoshop. Really, what I could do is duplicate out my buildings group layer and cut them all out as well, but to me that sounds like a lot more work, and then I might get lost with my different pieces. So I just thought cutting them out individually and then assembling them here, that would work out a little bit easier for me. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of aligning them the way I think I want them to look in the finished product here. And I can do that same thing where I did before, where I can drop in that comp. We'll just call this one separated buildings. And I'm going to drop that right in here so we can kind of see what that's going to look like, right? And we'll just drop it below everything else. And I'll just double click it and drag it to the side here. And now I can work and organize this and see what the finished product is going to look like here. Like right now, these buildings are all very, very tall, so that's not going to work too well for me. So I'm just going to take each of these and start scaling them and working them that way. All right, so I went ahead and I kind of arranged these here. And now what I'm going to do is take them to the very bottom of our comp here, and then take our comp and place it right around here. And I'm going to animate each one of these buildings one at a time. I know that I want them all finished by about 1 second here. And so what I'm going to do is just take all of them, Command A, hit their position, and I want them all to end right about here. I might maneuver them a little bit more, and let's just start back here. And I want them all to be moving down out of our composition here. And again, because it's going below our composition here, it is hitting the border of our composition window here, because this whole window is represented by this box. If I play that back, they're all coming up there. All right. Click on my separated buildings. Let's just adjust the timing of some of these. I don't want them to all come in at exactly the same time. Even if I give them a few frames apart, so much the better. And I'll take all of them and ease them. All right. Now we have one other issue where they're coming up just a little early there. And that's okay, because what I can do is take this whole separated comps building here, right? And let's just start all these a little later. So let's go to the frame where I want them to actually come up. So maybe about here. And I'm just checking right here to make sure that they're not popping up yet. I can see just that very edge. And we'll go down a frame. And now they'll pop up. All right, so let's see what that final result is starting to look like here. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I think we can finesse that just a little bit more. I'm going to take some of these and just stretch them out just a little past 1 second here. Because our main information is coming in, it doesn't necessarily matter too much if they're hitting that 1 second mark. Beautiful. Now let's also animate this out. So this is something that I usually had a lot of trouble with when I was first getting started making these lower thirds, is how do I easily animate all this stuff to go right back out the way it came from? So in the past, what I would do is I would kind of struggle with the keyframes and it would never look just right. We're going to make things really easy. And so what I'm going to do is first start with our main bar again. So we've got our main bar, and let's close everything else up here. Our main title bar, and that's where we have our position. It's moving on to our scene here. Well, I want that same thing to happen, so I'm just going to Command C and grab those keyframes. And then right around the 9-second mark here, I'm going to hit Command V. And those have placed the same keyframes. So right now it looks broken. It's going to come onto the scene, and then it's going to slowly drift away and come back. Not what we want. But what I can do, since I have these two selected, is go to my keyframe assistant and time reverse the keyframes. And what that's effectively going to do is just move in, stop here, and instead of going back to this value, it's going to keep this value and then move back out. So let's jump right to the end here, and you can see that's moving right back out. So it's just saying, okay, play them backwards. And I'm just going to move them over to about my 10-second mark. And we're going to do the same thing with the rest of ours that have that position on there. So anything that has that position, we're going to go ahead and time reverse. So here's our subtitle bar, Command C, go to about a little past 9 seconds here, and Command V, time reverse keyframes, and there we go. So let's see what that looks like. You know, if we want that subtitle bar to go first, obviously we'll just grab these two keyframes, and we'll do the same with our left bar, middle bar, and right bar. So just Command C, go towards the end here, right when this stuff is moving out. Time reverse, Command C. Making sure moving 4 frames, 1, 2, 3, 4, just like before. And time reverse. And our last one. Command V, time reverse. All right. The only thing I need to be aware of is the animation was done for those buildings in this other comp. So if I try just dragging this comp here, that's what's going to happen. Not necessarily what I want. So I'm going to have to go back into that separated buildings and do the same thing. Take all of them, time reverse them. And it looks like I just need to speed up just a couple of them here. So we'll take all of them, just make them happen sooner. All right, excellent. So that's looking pretty good. The last thing I want to do is stylize this a little bit more. So in our example right here, you'll notice that we have some almost light sweeps coming in through here, kind of giving it some secondary animation through there. And that's pretty easy to do. All I'm going to do is take my left bar, middle bar, and right bar. I'm going to pre-comp those and just call those animated bars. Make sure they're still in here. And I'm going to just take a light sweep effect on here. So we'll go to light sweep. I see this in commercials every day, and it's one of those effects that definitely pays the bills. And so I've placed my CC light sweeps on here, and I'm just going to set the center color to right about here. You can see what that's doing in here, as it's just kind of moving across my scene. And I'm going to just rotate that a little bit, something like that. And what we're going to do is just animate the direction of this coming onto the scene here. So after these bars kind of start moving on, so right about here, set a keyframe for my center position, which is right here. And we're just going to drag it out to about here and just move it over there. And then I'll move it right back. Right, so that's what that looks like. As that's animating on, we've got this light bar kind of moving right over there. Okay, so the last thing I want to do here is just add a little bit of a light sweep right to our outer outline. So I'm going to grab my light sweep again and put on the main outline. And let's just set our center point right here. And we're going to do the same thing we just did before. I just want to take this and animate the center. So we're going to start right about here. Move it towards the end. And just drag that center across here. So as that's playing back, we get this highlight that's moving across here. So if you're a car dealership or a lawyer, you know, this is how you make every commercial you guys ever do. Okay. So now that we have that all complete, I would just throw this, package this all up as one comp here, and we'll just call this as lower third. And now that we have the lower third, we'll put that in its own area. And I can go ahead and place any video right behind it. Now, you're not limited to just blueprints or buildings here. I mean, honestly, you can throw anything that you can possibly imagine in here. So if you're doing some sports things, maybe throwing out some sports or even video of a player's face, you know, like how they do on ESPN, that's how you would be making some of these different lower thirds. So what if now we want to export this lower third so we can place it on whatever we want to use? Well, if I want to export just this lower third with a certain name in here, I have a couple options. I'm going to go to my compositions and set it to the render queue. But what I want to make sure that I pick here is I want to make sure that I'm outputting for a format that has this transparency. So right now this is transparent. So if I place this video on something, this part with the checkerboard is going to be clear, and you're only going to see this part. If I export this as, like, say, an H.264 for Vimeo or YouTube, that's not going to give me this alpha channel, which is this clear channel here. Only some formats allow for that. So you have a couple options. What I like to do is actually use QuickTime and go to my format options, and I actually like to pick 4444. Now, you don't have to use this specific one, but when I have 4444, you'll notice I have RGB or RGB and alpha. And as soon as I do that, you'll notice that my millions of colors changes to millions of colors plus. That millions of colors plus always means alpha. And then we have a couple options that we have for our color here. When in doubt, always use straight unmatted. When you use matted, that can kind of blur out some of the edges and it tends to look a little junkier. There are uses for that, but if you're ever working with motion graphics or VFX, you almost always want straight unmatted colors. And we just want to make sure everything else is correct. If we're exporting out to a different resolution, we can do that here as well. And we'll hit OK. Now, if I export this, it's going to be a little bit larger because it has the alpha channel information, but it's going to have that transparency. So keep that in mind when you are exporting out your different projects. All right, so there you have it. My name is Stanislaw Robert Liberto with AV Ultra, and that's how you make an animated stylized lower third. If you're looking for more information on After Effects, Premiere, or other video production software, I offer training through my website at stanislawrobertliberto.com, and there you can find different classes I've got available, along with other tutorials. So I've got a bunch of tutorials I'm adding there often, and otherwise you can find a bunch of different classes that I teach. I will be offering online classes. Currently, I am offering classroom face-to-face classes. So if you are looking for more information, feel free to reach out. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.